Good morning, fellow single moms. How are you? Hi, this is Oghene'tega, and we've come to the end of a very, very busy and challenging year. A year that has been packed with God's grace as we survived COVID, right? And hopefully, many of us have our families intact after COVID. If there are any who lost family members, I want to say I'm very sorry and truly sorry for your loss. But as we come to the end of the year, I just want to spend some time in reflecting with you. At the same time, I want to pass on a very, very important message, even as we go on into the new year. So welcome, and I'm gonna do my little spiritual thing, get us going. I've realized over the most recent times that God's gifts are not given only to people who believe in Jesus Christ, and God doesn't use only people who believe in Jesus Christ to bless us. And therefore, when God sends us, God is not expecting us to bless only people who believe in Jesus Christ, but instead God is sending us to bless everybody. So this morning, what I want us to do instead of my usual prayer is I just want to take the time to acknowledge all those who benefit from my videos, all those who identify as single mothers, whatever your faith, whatever your religion. I believe very strongly that whatever God you serve is really interested in your well-being and the well-being of your children. I believe very firmly that whatever God you serve loves you and your children and wants them to succeed. Why do I believe this? Well, one of the courses I took in seminary as an independent study was world religions. And one of the threads that came out of my studies was I realized that every single religion exists for one purpose only. Every religion, from the ones who serve quote unquote idols, which I think it's I'm not so sure it's the right word, to the Judaic religions, to Islam, to Buddhism, to Hinduism. Everybody is looking for a solution. Every religion is looking for a solution to the human condition, to problems of the human condition. Every religion exists for the purpose of trying to overcome the difficulties and the negativities that humanity encounters as we pass through this earth. And also, in the process of looking for that solution, every religion tends to push for and emphasize the good in humanity, and also ask its adherents, which means members of its community, to practice whatever good they have identified in humanity. And I know that across all cultures in this world, children matter. Everybody agrees that children need to be taken care of. Whereas all cultures and all religions may not necessarily, including Christianity, do not necessarily affirm the value of women, I am convinced that the God who created the universe, just common sense, the God who makes women the pathway to which new life comes into this world, I just find it difficult to accept that God would devalue women. And it also makes me confident to declare that I do not believe and I do not accept that God would devalue the children that woman is raising as a result of society's dropping their ball and leaving them with this burden. As a person who believes in the God of the Jews, Yahweh, in the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, it is said that Yahweh says something that is under pressure already, God's not going to add more pressure to break it. I'll repeat that whatever is a person, not even a person, in nature, if something is under pressure, our God is so compassionate, our God is so empathetic that God is not going to add pressure to that thing or that person to make it break. So this is where in my life as a single mom, I could testify to this goodness of God, and I'm able to tell you, right? Okay, so having said all of that, I'll just say that to get you involved from whatever faith you are, know that this message is for you. Whether you are a Muslim, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Jew, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Buddhist, this message is for you. Because I believe inherently that the God of your religion wants you and your children to prosper. So that's my opening prayer. Okay? So now let's go to today's topic. Today's topic is, if we don't stop comparing our children, we're going to regret it. If we don't stop comparing our children, we're going to regret it. So I don't know how old you are watching this. As a single mom, I was a late bloomer, got married at 33, had my daughter 34. So now, you can tell my daughter's 19 and I'm kind of old. However, there are things that I carry from my background, right, from my generation, right, that I know a lot of children growing up in that generation experienced, and they experienced it, and their feedback on it was negative. And I also found out lately that, unbeknownst to me, I was doing that same thing. And what is that thing? Is comparison of our children. I have only one child, so I am not comparing my child to another child in the home, right? And I am an immigrant where I live, so I am not comparing my child to people around us either. But guess what I'm comparing my child to? I'm comparing my child to my culture. I compare my child to how I grew up, where I was raised. The things that made me who I am, the things that empowered me and strengthened me, and in the upbringing that gave me the grace, to be able to recognize God's grace, to tap into it, and to be able to hold on to that grace through the process of a single mom. So I tend to think about how I was raised. And how was I raised? At 10 years old, I was sent to boarding school. To go to high school, right? Junior, senior high, I started at 10 years old. Since I was 10 years old till this very day, 40 something years later, I have never really lived at home with my family, right? I have gone from one level of education to the other. But what really impacted me were those 5 years that I spent in boarding school. Those 5 years were years of intensive training, not like military style, but because of the fact that You don't have relatives there, and you are on campus with almost 1,000 other kids, and everybody's expected to do the same thing. It was like a military camp in that manner. It's not that it was harsh, but it was just like a life where you were expected, to do certain things at a certain time, a life of discipline. And my elder siblings who are girls, some of them went through that, right? And my experience, our school produced some of the great leaders of our nation, God rest their souls, including my elder sister, who was also my mom, who has passed away. When I look at the world around us, and I look at the life that I was thrown into unexpectedly as a single mom, and my fighting to stay balanced, I always go back. I always go back to my upbringing. I always go back to those 5 years of boarding school, and how it shaped me. How it shaped me to be self-regulatory, how it shaped me to be self-disciplined, how it shaped me to be self-motivated, how it shaped me to be a leader, right? It shaped me in so many ways to be who I am today. And as I am raising my child, I am so astounded at the lack of resources that there are for children around us. There is nothing being sown into children's lives. There's no, in my area, anyway, where we lived in Maryland, it was different. At 2 years old, my daughter was like a star in so many things already, recreational things. However, where we live, there is little or nothing for children in not just our city, but many cities around us. Although these cities have families, the only thing really that shows that there are children in these communities are the schools. But the schools are they're a place for education. You cannot send your child to school and expect the teacher to do it all. There's a whole lot more that society needs to be involved in. Society needs to provide space for children's creativity outside of school. It needs to provide space for children's recreational needs outside of school. It needs to provide space for children's curiosity outside of school, children's energy levels. Every community that's going to be a livable community and raise successful future generation needs to have these things. And I'm always appalled at how little there is. Okay, so growing up, there was not much of that for us anyway. So let me be real. It's not that I grew up in a situation where we had all this recreation and whatnot. However, being in that confined space of a boarding school, the boarding school did create those opportunities. Through the school where we lived 24/7 for like 10 months out of a year, we had those things provided for us. So we learned how to tap into our creative skills. We learned how to tap into our recreational skills. We learned how to feed our curiosity. We learned how to tap into healthy social patterns. So all of this really prepared me to ride the struggle bus. And like my daughter reminds me, she says, Mom, you all expect us to ride the same struggle bus that you rode, but we can't. That bus is no longer there. It's a different struggle bus for us. As a mom who wants a child to succeed, this is often hard for me to articulate, because I look at how many kids are falling through the cracks because of society's lack of responsibility towards children. If we're not going to have those boarding schools, then we need to be putting all these other things in place in our communities. But many of our communities, majority don't have it. And our children are lacking. And then what happens is society turns around and start beating down on the children and criticizing them and whatnot. Anyway, back to today's topic, where I found myself in this horrible situation where I constantly compare my child to a life that I lived like 40 something years ago. And I realized something. My child is extraordinarily brilliant, extraordinarily creative. She's like a little bit on the side of the child prodigy thing. However, what happens is I look at the society that she's been thrust into. I'm panic and I say, oh my gosh, I don't think she's prepared for this. I don't think she's prepared for what this society is. And I start panicking and I start saying, making demands of her. Oh, you got to be this way. You got to have these regulatory things. You got to wake up at 5 a.m. like I used to wake up. You used to do this and do that and do that. But you know what God helped me realize? God helped me see that by doing that, I was not appreciating God's grace in my child's life. Because God is not in any land. God is not limited to any land. Neither is God limited to any generation. God is there in every generation. And by me constantly comparing my daughter's generation that she's living and growing into the generation I grew up in, I was limiting God's grace to that my generation, and I was not opening my eyes to see what God had in this difficult generation for the children born of this generation. Because the Bible truly tells us that God will not allow a trial to come upon human beings without providing a way for us to deal with it and come out successful. That trial, people tend to translate that word as temptation. It's not really temptation, it's just a trials, hardship, challenges. As long as we feel that God, you're looking, you're watching, why aren't you taking this challenge away? That passage is telling us that don't worry about the presence of the challenge. Be instead aware that God has a way for you to deal with that challenge. And so what we need to do is tap into that a provision and say, God, open our eyes to see it. Open our eyes to see the ram in the bush. Open our eyes to see how to provide for the recreational needs, the social needs, the creative needs of our children in this kind of generation that they live in. So that was the first thing I learned, that by comparison, compare my child to my generation, I was limiting God to my generation, right? As though God just stopped moving and working, in only my generation. Can you think how absurd that is? Yes, my generation produced a lot of great leaders, but guess what? It's the generations after them that produce all the advancement in the world. So, okay, people, we gotta be careful how we keep beating down the younger generation, because think and look around you. Everything you got going for you, the convenience, our ability to survive COVID, was because of our children's curiosity with these technical things in technology. Okay, back to the topic. Second thing I discovered was that comparing my child's time, or the time in which she's growing, to the time in which I grew up, was also limiting my child's successes. Like I said, my daughter is incredibly brilliant. She's just one little really precious treasure. And not little, but she's a precious treasure. And comparison prevents me from seeing just how incredible she is. And you know what happens when I keep, because I feel like, oh, she would be secure if she had this training. I won't have to fear for her, because you know what? After all, I graduated from high school at 15 years old, and I've never really lived with my parents since then. I was okay. And you know what? So I'm thinking all these things, and I'm nervous, like, okay, she don't have this preparation, and she's older than I was, even though this kid graduated college at 18. I'm having all these nervous concerns. And what God helped me see is, guess what, baby? You're preventing yourself from seeing the incredibly way that your child is equipped to deal and operate in her generation. See, all these skills she got, that's what this generation need. That generation don't need our struggle boss. They need quick thinking people. They need people who can be on that electronics and not be tired. Okay? Because the future is that technology. They're going to be working on it. Many people for the few years coming, her generation, generations after her, they're all going to be working with technology. So when they're on that technology, when they don't get tired, that's them. That's their training boss. That's their struggle boss. That's God equipping them to make it to that next future. And the third thing I learned was, if we compare our children to the children we were in our generation, or whatever else you compare your child to, what's going to happen is you're going to push your children into some really, really bad messes. For example, when I was growing up, I saw parents who did that and the outcome was very bad. So parents whose children were doing well economically would tend to compare their children to children of their friends who were super, wealthy and they're doing well. And what happened, I'm a Nigerian, right? And Nigerian American. But what happened was that led to a whole wave of crime in our country. Today, many of those parents are still complaining about the crime level in Nigeria, but they don't think about how they contributed to it. You see, our children love us. They love us so much, they want to please us. If we keep sending the message to our children that something they are or something they're not is not pleasing to us, the tendency is going to be for them to want to try harder or to try to do that thing which we think they ought to do so that they're no longer lacking. So when the whole country was struggling, so it was kind of weird that the parents were not aware of the broader picture of the generation that their children was in, that the political system was collapsing, economic system was collapsing, there were no jobs, kids were struggling, ASU was always on strike, and kids were not prepared to do anything other than to go to school, versus in their generation where they had the skills, the marketing skills, the commercial skills, whatever, and they could market and make money without going to school. Well, they had trained their children to be 100% in school. Now they're expecting the children, in the absence of the promotions that school is supposed to bring, they're expecting the children to be productive economically. And the children, not wanting to disappoint their parents, started doing any kind of thing that they could. And that's how 419 was born. For those of you who don't know, 419 is a Nigerian term that was given to people who, in that generation, the 90s, the mid 90s up, when younger generations were trying to fit their parents' economic expectations, started engaging in cyber crime, the section of people, this writing of letters and telling people, I got money here, some bank account, whatever. You guys have seen it on 60 Minutes and all that stuff. But we drive our children to crimes. We drive our children to corruption when we compare them. So let's talk about, we've talked a little bit, I gave through my story, there's a little bit of exposure about why we compare our children. Another thing, let me talk now about specifically why we compare our children. So I'm going to throw in some more reasons other than the one I did, right? Sometimes we feel our children, which we already talked about, sometimes we feel our children are not trying hard enough. Sometimes we feel like they're going to fall back, they're not going to succeed. So really, we do this comparison thing as an act of love, right? We're thinking that if we can show them a picture of what they're supposed to be through somebody else, that is going to motivate them. But like we've seen, it's not true. It's not going to motivate them. It leads them off of God's path. It's a slap in the face to God, who has helped us this far, and it corrupts the children. But If there is a legitimate reason, which I feel all parents, we're gonna be concerned about our children's progress, and we should be. If you're not concerned, parent, I think you're lacking your responsibilities. Don't just sit back and just let the children raise themselves. You got to be involved. You got to help them. They've never been on this path before. They don't have experience. So you got to be a partner. Be involved. Okay. And for a lot of times when they're younger, you're going to be the driving partner, but still you are just a partner. You're not taking it over. You got to work in collaboration with their skills, with their interests, with the graces that God has put in their lives. That's why I call it partnership. So don't be going in there and thinking you're just going to come in and just take over and be driving the bus like that. So what happens is if we have situations like that, which are really legit, you're concerned. First of all, you gotta, what I want to say to you, this is how we deal with it, right? First of all, you gotta stop and look how far God has brought you all. Affirm it. Affirm that you all, despite all the negatives around you all did good. Can I get an amen? Can I get a whatever from your culture? Just woo, 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 woo. Snap, 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 snap. You know, give yourself a snap, give yourself a pat on the back. You all did okay. You're here. You made it okay. Whether your baby's only 2 years old, you're still there. You're still in the struggle bus of being a single mom. You made it okay. All right. So acknowledge that. Then the second thing, you gotta go from there. This is the hard part. But if we really want our children to succeed and we want to honor God, we got to do this. When you look at what your child has accomplished for their level, not in comparison to anybody else, but for their level, you have to be content. You have to be content. You as a parent, you got to be content. You got to be content. You got to be content by saying to yourself, okay, I did my job. We're okay. The kid is okay. What they have achieved is okay. Be content. Be content. And then the third thing you do is celebrate your child's or your children's achievements. Celebrate it. Find ways of just sending those messages of approval for the things they have done in their lives. Maybe whatever grade, the whatever grades they are in, it doesn't matter how little, just celebrate it. Oh, if they are average kids, they're C students, right? I always tell my daughter that I can only encourage you to succeed according to what God put in you. So many years ago, I did this radio show where I talked about recognizing your child's potential, because you don't want to push a child who is a C producing child to an A child. That's wrong. You got to support children at the level God has shown you through your attentiveness. That's who they are. You help them maintain their level. Now, if a child is not up to C at all, is a D and an E and an F, then you got to find alternatives learning. So that means that whatever path you pursue may not be the path to really ignite that child's intelligence. It's not that it's not there, but you're not in the path that's unlocking it. So you got to find alternative methods of learning, alternative schooling, and things like that to encourage them. So you got to celebrate. You just got to celebrate them where they are. Celebrate them what they've done. And then the last thing is you got to have faith that it's going to be okay. You got to have faith that they are going to be okay. You have to have faith that what you and them have accomplished has equipped them to participate in the world. Have faith. And then what does the Bible say after you've done all that you're supposed to do? What does it say? It says you wait. You wait for God to position them. Wait. Wait for God to position them. Don't be the one who's hustling and trying to do all kinds of things to position them, because that's just going to be stressful, and it really sends a negative message to the child that you do not appreciate them. You only appreciate them for what they can bring and what they can give. And those of us from our generation, you know how much we were hurt by those practices from our cultures. So don't do that. So you have to learn to wait. And here is what I love about the waiting. The waiting portion is the portion where you get to enjoy your child, this wonderful human being that you have had the privilege of being part of their lives, these wonderful human beings that God has put under your care and trusted you, these wonderful human beings that God has worked with you to raise. You got to enjoy them. They said the tasting the pudding. You should be the first person to taste the result of all the stuff you put in your children. Because guess what? A time will come, they're going to be gone. And you're going to miss them. You're going to miss them so bad that you're going to wish that they were there. You ain't going to care whether they got they're gonna miss them so bad, and you're gonna care whether they were successful or not successful. You just want them around. So what you do right now, enjoy them. That's in the waiting period. Have fun with them. Show them that it's okay for them to be home. Don't try to drive them out of your house like America does. So when they're 18, get rid of them. Don't do that. Put up with all the mess, all the madness, all the challenges, and just love on them and let them love on you. Let them show you what wonderful human being you've raised. Because I tell you, you never really see the full thing, the full wonderful human being you raised when they go away so quickly. And it will create, that's going to lead to some misunderstandings in the future because you don't really understand them. So if you follow these steps that I've given you, and then you come to this waiting period, is the most wonderful time. You got to enjoy them, do everything you want with them, love having them around, get to know them as friends. Let your relationship transition to one of friendship so that when they leave home, they do not forget about you. They don't turn their backs on you because you are a friend. All right. So thank you for tuning in, and may the beauty that is in all of humanity, the beauty that is in all of nature, come together to convince you that God wants you and your children to succeed, whichever God you are. And may it give you joy. May it give you hope. May it give you peace in this season. So we're coming to the end of the year. I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful end of the year. I wish you all peace. I wish you all joy. I wish you all seasons of reflection to show you that you and your children have the grace of whichever God you serve, and you all gonna be okay. Thank you so much for staying with me throughout these years. Let's continue to build, encourage other people, as well as ourselves in the new year. God bless you.